Well, thank you very much, and thank you all for coming out because, as we've heard, it was short notice, and so it's really nice to see the room full. I am very thankful to my dear friends Margaret and Michael for making this introduction. I'm hopeful that, Ginny, with you guys at the bank, as well as with the wonderful team at Womentum, that will continue the relationship as well. I hope that this will go beyond just today. And in advance, I am also going to echo the thanks to Abby and Claire in the back there with those beautiful books on the table that are available, and for them rallying to make that happen as well. And I can't think of any more beautiful, kind of stunning, otherworldly places to visit and do something like this than Jackson Hole. I haven't been here a lot, but I've been here several times over the years, and it is equally as captivating every time. We looked out the window this morning at the mountains, and I don't know how you cannot just think words like awe and wonder when you're surrounded by something like that. So very, very thankful to be here. I'm going to share a few. I just put together like some random slides because it's always hard when you have like a little bit of time and you want to share the story and all of that. But a little bit about the how to get to space stuff, a little bit about the in space kind of thing and what's going on now. And I thought I'd start with this little book trailer that my publisher put together that I think speaks to where I'm at with all of this stuff now, kind of the result of the experience of being in space. And hopefully that will get us going, and then I can jump into the space stuff. All right, so let's see if I can make the technical magic happen here. Do we not? Do you see the cursor? I don't see it.
Yeah.
There it is. I'm not seeing it on the screen here. That's why it's so weird. There it is right there. All right, now there is audio on this. I've been blessed to experience our planetary home from some extraordinary vantage points. From inner space on the Aquarius undersea habitat to outer space on the International Space Station. Witnessing the complexity of human survival in these extreme environments, I discovered 3 unifying and life-changing lessons. We live on a planet, an overwhelmingly beautiful, glowing, colorful, crystal clear planet. We are all Earthlings, and the only border that matters is that thin blue line of atmosphere that blankets and protects us all. We build our spaceships as mechanical life support systems, like the ISS, to mimic as best we can what Earth does for us naturally. As a crew on the space station, we know that our survival depends on staying acutely aware of the health and well-being of our atmosphere, of our spaceship, and of all our crewmates. In contrast, here on Spaceship Earth, we pollute our atmosphere, our oceans, and our soils. We are experiencing devastating impacts to our planetary life support system and to all life we share our planet with. To survive and thrive, we must bring these 3 simple lessons of planet, Earthling, and thin blue line into our daily lives. I came back to Earth knowing that by behaving like crewmates, not passengers, we have the power to create a future for all life on Earth that's as beautiful as it looks from space. I don't know if you all can hear that or not, but we'll kind of recap in the slides here. But we go to space, we travel to space as human beings, and it's a really complex thing to do. To just get off the planet, out of Earth's gravity, is a really complex thing. To just live and work in space for even a short period of time, to get home safely, there's a load of complexity in all of that. And yet, I really feel like there were these 3 simple lessons that just resonated with me while I was in space and then since I've been home. And they're things that we all have learned, probably from
This young man here probably already knows these lessons, and yet we need to somehow bring them back into our daily lives. And I cannot, again, think of a better place than someplace like Jackson Hole to really reflect on something like this. Like, oh my gosh, we live on a planet. We all know that, right? But it's a pretty compelling thing to think about. And yet we are in this room, right? Sitting here, still in this room, and yet we're on a planet that's rotating, spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, is traveling around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour. And yet we just feel like we're home, like we're in our place, where we're supposed to be, this place that was designed to take care of us. We're all Earthlings. We're all people of this planet. And absolutely, whether we want to believe it or not, the only border that matters is that veil-thin blue line of atmosphere that blankets and protects us all. Those were the three things that really and truly were, like, if I had to sum it up, what came out of being in space for me. And I've tried to, to work to bring those things to life, not just through the book, but through, engagements like this, conversations, and in the work that I'm doing since flying in space. So a little bit about the flying in space thing. So this is a picture that I show because, first of all, I really love it. I think it's beautiful. But it's one that, all in one picture, kind of reminds me what it was like to be in space. It's really beautiful. I hope you agree it's really beautiful. But it's funny because I look at it and that silhouetted space shuttle, that's the Space Shuttle Atlantis. And that's my ride home after my first flight, which was about 3 months on the International Space Station. And it just looks like it's hanging there still. Like it's just, there in space. And yet, I know we're anything but still. We are orbiting the Earth 16 times a day, which means we're going around at like 17,500 miles an hour, which is about 5 miles a second, which means every 90 minutes we orbit the Earth, and every 45 minutes or so we get one of these really beautiful sunrises or sunsets out the window. I also know that I'm inside that little silhouetted space shuttle with my crew of 6 crewmates who had come to the station to bring me home after that 3 months in space, and that we're on our way home to our families, which is a nice place to be after that time in space. And that my friend Jeff Williams, who I just spent a couple months with on the space station, took this really cool picture for us to have as a memory of that time. But no memory of being in space would be complete without one of these sunrise or sunset pictures. And for me, because I get asked a lot, well, how did this all start for you? Where, how do you have a path that takes you, to becoming an astronaut? And what I like to think about is that, for me, I don't think there was any predetermined, I want to be an astronaut kind of thing going on. I am old enough to have watched the first moon landing. I have very vivid memory of that with my family in front of the black and white TV with a grilled cheese sandwich, as best I can remember. And then going outside and looking at the moon and thinking about people up there and being, even at 6 or 7, in awe of that, knowing that that was a really extraordinary thing to be happening. But it was a long time before I started thinking about astronaut as something that could even potentially be possible for me. But I grew up in a family where my parents shared what they loved with me. My mom was a nurse. She was a very creative, still is very creative woman. Back in those days when I was growing up, it was the days of macrame and hooked rugs and pottery. And so if she was doing some of that, my sisters and I were experiencing it with her as well. And my dad loved to build and fly small airplanes. And so we also spent a lot of time out at the local airport, hanging out with him. And again, thanks to my mom getting us there. And I think that combinations of things really just influenced the choices I made along the way for what I wanted to do. And the time at the airport put into me also, I just discovered this love of flying, of not just wanting to know how to fly, but of wanting to know how things fly. And that led me to studying aeronautical engineering at college. And while I was there, I was telling Ginny earlier, it's like, man, if you discover you want to know how airplanes fly, why would you not want to know how rocket ships fly? And it all just kind of fell out of the things I was curious about and wanted to know more about. And that doesn't mean that, I didn't have to study hard along the way and, that kind of thing. But I feel like I was really just paying attention to the things I enjoyed. And as a result of that, after quite a few years, and it was probably 9 into the 10 years of where I was already working as an engineer at the Kennedy Space Center for NASA, that I finally thought about applying to be an astronaut. And it was after those years of working there, getting space shuttles ready to fly for crews, starting to build up the hardware for the space station, that I started to pay attention to the fact that, man, 99.9% of an astronaut's job is not flying in space. It's here on Earth. And as best I could tell, a majority of it was a lot like what I was already doing as a NASA engineer. And so that got me thinking that I could at least consider it. And up to that point also, I thought, as I saw these people coming through, getting ready to fly on their missions, I'm like, man, this is a job all these other special people get to do. Why would they ever pick me? What have I ever done that would, even though I knew I satisfied all the basic requirements. So it really took me speaking to people that I consider to be mentors. Thank you, Womentum, for taking on that role as mentors for people. I think it is a huge responsibility, and I feel like it's a way that we can all stay present for other people to help lift them up and what they're wanting to do. So I reached out to a couple of people I consider to be mentors. I asked them, hey, what do you think about this astronaut thing? Should I even consider it? And they did. It's not like they said, Nicole, you'll make the greatest astronaut there ever was, which they might say now. But they really, it's like they gave me permission to do the one thing, the single thing I had total control of in this whole astronaut selection process, which was to pick up the pen and fill out the application. And I'm also thankful, and I think this is a key aspect for any mentor, is that they didn't discourage me in any way. They didn't say, oh, Nicole, thousands of people apply to be an astronaut. It's a real long shot, but go ahead and fill out the application. They didn't do any of that. They just put me kind of in this place where I felt like I could pick up the pen and fill out the application. And when I see them, I thank them still to this day. So this is the group of people I got selected with back in the year 2000. It's a long time ago now. And I know if you couldn't tell, this is me. And so this was the 18th group of NASA astronauts. We were selected in the year 2000. Our class name is the Bugs. One of the traditions in the astronaut office is that the class before you names you, and they usually try to be a little bit silly or disparaging with their name. But we loved the name because most bugs have wings. What do most astronauts want to do? They want to fly, so we thought the name was fine. It actually came, though, from this idea of the Millennium Bug. Anybody remember that? Where we thought life was going to end as we know it when we rolled from 1999 to 2000. Those zeros were going to crash the computers and all of that. Thankfully, it didn't happen. But we loved it, and so hence you can see this is not our official NASA photo, but the one we like, though. But I love this picture because not one of the people in this picture got there the same way, right? There are 17 of us, somewhere along the way, decided that we could pick up the pen and fill out the application, that we wanted to do this, but not one of us got there the same way. And I think that's a pretty cool thing to think about, is that pretty much any area of science or work experience that NASA considers qualified is represented in this picture. And then on top of that, you've got people that have all this diverse background and experiences and the other things they love, like art and race car driving and water skiing and house building and cooking and all of those kinds of things, that when you finally do pick a group of these folks to put together as a crew, you have a really great mix of people to have a successful mission. And on my second flight, STS-133, which was the final flight of Discovery, 5 of our 6 crewmates were from this class, which was pretty fun to have. Pretty much all bugs. And our commander, Steve Lindsay, he was, I think, from the class called the Maggots. I think bugs is better than maggots. We made him an honorary bug. So when we train to fly in space, we don't get to go to space to learn how to fly in space. There is a lot of on-the-job training when you're there, just because there's a lot of things you can't do, like float, when you're down here, to prepare for what it's like to be in space. But pretty much everything we do, whether it's learning about the systems on the space station, or how to do a spacewalk, or how to fly the robotic arm, that big arm, or the science that we're going to do, embedded in all of that in one way or another is how to work as an effective team, as a crew. And the absolute best way that we do that is to go live underwater and spend time in this like inner space environment to help us learn how to live and work in outer space. And I had the opportunity to spend 18 days living underwater on the Aquarius undersea habitat. And it's a place where, just like on your space station, you can't just float out the door without special equipment on in order to survive. Once you're down there for an hour at that 60-foot depth, you can't just swim to the surface to escape a problem happening, so you have to deal with it in that environment. Inside of the habitat, we were doing experiments, a lot like what we would do on the space station. The way we communicated with the team on the surface was a lot like what we would do from our space station down to the mission control team on Earth. And so the perfect parallel to what would be the experience of flying in space. And I had the chance to do that mission with one of my friends, and I remember we were sitting at the window of the Aquarius habitat before coming up on the final day, and neither of us had flown in space yet. And we just looked at each other like, man, if we never get to go to space, this was the coolest thing and the most amazing experience, to just be like surrounded by Earth and to have a perspective of it from, that kind of immersed view versus later what we would be able to see when we went to space and were surrounding it. So on both of my flights, I flew to space on the Space Shuttle Discovery. I could spend all day talking about this one picture and what it was like to launch on a space shuttle, and the wild ride that it really is, and how incredible it is that we can go from peacefully, quietly, just in this still place, laying on our backs at the launch pad, to 8.5 minutes later, orbiting the Earth at 17,500 miles an hour. Pretty amazing that we can even, as humans, make that happen for ourselves. And it is an incredible ride. I miss the space shuttle. I wish we didn't have to retire the space shuttle. One of the reasons we did that is because of the Artemis launches that are about to happen very soon. Hopefully the first one on Monday. If you guys, I think it's 8:33 a.m. Eastern time is when this Artemis vehicle is supposed to be launching and going to the moon and circling the moon and proving out what we need for the next mission, which would be with people on it. But Space Shuttle was a beautiful, beautiful spacecraft that did a lot of really, I don't know, to me it was incredible that you would have this vehicle that was essentially designed by committee. In the end, everybody wanted it to do everything. And it really did end up doing it all pretty well. Both times I was taken to the space station. Does everybody know about the International Space Station? And do you guys, there's an app that you can have on your phone, or you can just go to the website. It's called Spot the Station. And yeah, it's pretty cool. And you can put your city or zip code in, and it'll tell you when the space station is flying over. I looked before coming out here. There are some early morning passes. There's none at night this week, but you can put it in, and then it'll tell you which direction to look, and you watch for this beautiful, like, crystal clear glowing dot of light that's just moving quickly through the sky. And that's the space station. That is this, which if you were to lay it on the ground, that little dot of light, it's bigger than a football field. and it weighs about 1 million pounds. And for over 20 years now, we've had people representing over 15 countries, 5 international space agencies, somehow working peacefully and successfully together on this mechanical life support system in space. Pretty cool to think about. On top of the fact that to me, it's just a masterpiece to look at. It's a beautiful spaceship. These, of course, are our solar arrays where we collect all the sun's energy and we get all of our electricity from that. We live in these little modules that kind of look like cans, and they're pressurized so that we can float around in our regular clothes. You don't have to be in a spacesuit all the time. But just a really wonderful place where everything that's happening up there is ultimately about improving life on Earth. And that, for me, was the most special part of being a crew on that spaceship, was knowing that everything we were doing there, the science, the way we built the hardware there, the relationships between the international partners, ultimately was about improving life on Earth. Which is why, as the space station program, we have the motto, off the Earth, for the Earth, and the idea that everything we're doing there is together for the planet. Now we build that, right, that machine in space so that we can have the warm, fleshy ones living there, right? So that we can be up there doing the work we're doing and surviving. And not just surviving, but I think thriving in that place. And a big part of that is that that we know we have to pay attention to what's going on around us. We have to be aware every day of how much CO2 is in our atmosphere, of how much clean drinking water we have, of the integrity of our thin metal hull, of the health and well-being of all of our crewmates in order to survive. We know we have to do that every day. I would argue that's a beautiful parallel, and it is what I write about in the book, to the way we should be living like crewmates here on Spaceship Earth. These are the guys I spent most of my time on that first mission with in space. I like to show this picture because I think that in anything we do, whatever group of people you're working with, on whatever it is you're working on, you want to have a good time, right? You should enjoy yourself. You should be excited about what you're doing and feel like you're bringing value to things. And I think you can tell we enjoyed ourselves. But I also know when I look at this picture that when things went wrong, when they didn't go as planned, I knew every single person in this picture would have my back. And I know that they trusted I would have theirs. And that is the best kind of people to work with. You're gonna have a good time, but you're also gonna be there when you need each other to make sure that things go the way they should. And I'll just share with you, I don't know if you noticed, we have these red noses on. And that's because this person right here, his name is Guy Laliberté, and he's from Canada. He was the owner-founder of Cirque du Soleil. And this was back in 2009. I would say back around that time, he must have had a spare 35 million or so to take a ride to the space station. He spent about 10 days with us on the space station, and really great guy. And beyond just wanting to go to space himself, I think, he has an organization called One Drop that's all about educating about clean drinking water, about providing access to clean drinking water to people who may never have had that before on Earth. And so he built his whole mission around that messaging of the One Drop. Speaking of One Drop, so why do we even go and spend time on a place like a space station and do science there and have countries coming together to be in that place? Well, the reason is, and I think this picture depicts it kind of in a cool way, is that we can take gravity out of the equation. And scientists are really intrigued by that, by being able to look at something from a whole new perspective again, and to be able to look at things they may have thought they knew everything about already, but by taking gravity out of it, they can learn even more. And that's what we're doing every day up there. Pretty much any area of science you can imagine is being worked on the space station. Some of my favorite things were when we end up being the guinea pigs a lot in the experiments. And that's because a lot of what we can learn from spending time in that kind of environment and the way it impacts our bodies can help us take care of different kinds of things like osteoporosis and the way our eyes change over time, and like muscle issues. We can look at that in space in a really accelerated way because of the impact the environment has on us. And that allows us to help improve life for people down here on Earth. And then there's things like protein crystal growth experiments, which are really cool in the ways you can look at how cells and proteins grow in 3 dimensions, like in like their perfect form, because they're floating in this microgravity environment, versus putting them into like a petri dish where they'll go flat here on Earth, and then you have to kind of think about how that's really working versus seeing how it really works in 3 dimensions by being in microgravity. So we're working up there. We're doing this science, we're doing the maintenance on the station, we do a lot of outreach activities from the space station. But I can tell you, any free time that an astronaut has is likely going to be spent in front of a window like this. And this is a place called the Cupola module. It's a Earth-facing like bay window. We have our robotics workstation is set up in there. It's like a computer station with kind of like a big video game where you've got the controllers and you can fly the big robotic arm around from out there, and you can do a lot of observation from this place. But it is an amazing place to just spend time and watch the Earth below. And so you will find astronauts in that place. I grew up in Florida, so I wanted to see Florida from space. And I think when we go anywhere as humans, we're always looking for that familiar thing, right? We want to see the thing that's familiar to us. Florida was what I wanted to see from space. But I think it's cool how very quickly Florida went from this idea of Florida being my home to Florida, stick it in from the right there, being part of a planet that's my home. I mean, that I have not lost that since, and I don't think you have to go to space to understand this idea of, again, that we live on a planet. But it certainly is in your face when you look out the window from up there. It is a gorgeous view. This might look a little familiar. This is a shot of part of Wyoming from space, and it's kind of cool how you look for the familiar, but then you also look for places that you may or may not have been before, and then you really want to get down to Earth and explore them. And so very thankful that I had the opportunity to see Wyoming from space this way, but then I could also be down here experiencing Wyoming in the way we are today. And of course, you look through the window and you're seeing all these things. Every time you look through the window, it's surprising. No matter if you've flown over that place before or not. I kind of got to the point where I started thinking about what I was seeing through the window more like a work of art than really being concerned about which particular place on the planet that was. And this one location, which to me, when I looked out the window, looked like somebody had reached their hand down with a paintbrush and painted a wave on the ocean. And it's gorgeous. It's a tiny little chain of islands on the northern coast of Venezuela called Las Rocas. And I probably had like 1,000mm zoom lens on the camera for this, really zoomed into this little place. And this one picture has been a big inspiration for me, both while I was in space, where I had brought a little watercolor kit with me, and that was the picture I used as inspiration to paint while I was there. And yes, painting with watercolors in a place where things float is different than painting with watercolors down here on Earth. And it was all, it was like most stuff in space where it wasn't more difficult, it was just different. And you had to kind of get adjusted to what the differences were going to be. And so I had a chance to paint that. When I was thinking about retiring from NASA, I kept coming back to that chance to paint in space and how I might be able to use art as a way to engage people in conversations about what's going on in space that's all about improving life on Earth. And I started off on that path, and then I was very fortunately introduced to some people who were doing projects with kids in hospitals, and now we do them also in refugee centers and orphanages around the world. But working with kids and creating art spacesuits and interactive kind of engaging projects from the kids' artwork, and really space-themed art therapy is what we're doing. And this picture in the top here you can see is one of the art spacesuits that we created. Each of the triangles in that suit is one kid's piece of art that was brought together. And this is a little video. I'm gonna see, where that thing is again. There it is. And so those are a couple of the suits that we've done.
For all times, kids will school, play outside. We won't need a word for cancer. It will be.
Just you can see all of the artwork coming together. This suit was made from artwork from kids in all of the International Space Station partner countries. And then the company that makes our real spacesuits, ILC Dover, they've volunteered with us since the beginning to quilt these together. We've had the chance to get a couple of them to space and have some engagements with the kids on the ground and have some of our friends wear them in space, and then for the kids to see them flying through space. I can tell you, every astronaut who sees these suits wants to know why theirs has to just be white now, and why can't they have colored suits, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, and our motto is that we are uniting a planetary community of children through the awe and wonder of space exploration and the healing power of art. All right, so bringing things back to Earth. You know, we travel out in space. As humans, we've gone as far as the moon, and we're looking to go back there. And in all of those voyages, we've had Earth looking like Earth out the window. We're looking forward to a time where we'll travel to places like Mars, where at some point there'll be some line in space where Earth doesn't look like Earth out the window anymore. This is actually a picture from one of the rovers on Mars, and we are in this picture. This little dot of light is Earth as seen from the surface of Mars. And I think it doesn't matter whether we're traveling as humans, whether we have our robotic missions out there, we're going out and we're learning all these things about these other places, but we're always looking like back towards Earth, back for that connection to home. And we do that when we're with our robots on Mars. We do it when we're on the space station and looking back at Wyoming from the space station. And we have done it since the Apollo days, where from Apollo 8, over 50 years ago, where we had this iconic image that's known as Earthrise shared with us, where with the first time with human eyes, our planet was witnessed rising over the horizon of another planetary body, the moon. And no better way, I don't think, to really look at who and where we all are together in space than this one iconic image, and to remind us again of the fact that we live on a planet, we're all Earthlings, only border that matters, that thin blue line of atmosphere, and that we really do have an important role as crewmates and non-passengers here on Spaceship Earth. Thank you.